8:14 a.m., November 12, 1944, the Hürtgen Forest, Germany. The mist in the death factory didn't just drift, it hung like a wet shroud, smelling of cordite and rot. Inside the reinforced concrete bunker the Americans called the Iron Gate, Oberleutnant Klaus von Richter adjusted his monocle and checked his pocket watch. He felt an icy sense of superiority. His position was an architectural masterpiece of slaughter. To his left, a twin MG-42 setup was sighted exactly 34 inches above the mud, designed to catch men at the waist as they struggled through the ravine. He sipped a cup of real coffee, a luxury of the high command, convinced that the American amateur would never breach his threshold. In the next 40 seconds, von Richter would be dead. 30 yards away, buried in a slurry of half-frozen sludge and human waste, Private Elias Thorn didn't look like a liberator. He looked like a corpse. His hands were numb, his face was stained with oil, and he wasn't holding the standard issue M1 Garand. Instead, he gripped 2 lengths of galvanized plumbing pipe, crudely threaded and held together with friction tape. This was Thorn's kitchen pipe. What he was about to do would flip Army doctrine on its head. It was an act of desperate mechanical genius, and it was an act for which he had been explicitly promised a court-martial. Elias Thorn was never meant for the infantry. 3 years prior, he was a master of pressure at the Jones and Laughlin Steelworks in Pittsburgh. He spent 12 hours a day in the humid, screaming belly of the mills, threading high-pressure steam lines. He didn't think in terms of tactics, he thought in terms of anatomy, the way fluid and force moved through confined spaces. He knew exactly how much PSI a 3/4-inch iron pipe could sustain before it became a fragmenting bomb. When the draft board took him, his instructors at Fort Benning were baffled. While other recruits practiced their marksmanship, Thorn was caught dismantling a broken field stove to see if the fuel line could be repurposed as a firing pin. They saw a distracted laborer. They missed the fact that Thorn didn't see a battlefield as a map. He saw it as a plumbing problem. He understood that in the right hands, scrap metal wasn't junk. It was a delivery system for lethal intent. The Iron Gate was a tactical nightmare. It was a trench system carved into a limestone ridge, protected by a blind corner that rendered standard frag grenades useless. They simply bounced back toward the thrower. The official Army manual dictated a frontal assault with suppressive fire. It was a mathematical death sentence. Corporal David Miller, 22, from Columbus, Ohio, was the first to try. He was a talented illustrator who had a 6-year-old daughter named Clara. Clara would keep his last letter, the one where he drew a picture of a bicycle he promised to buy her for Christmas, in a cedar box for the next 60 years. Miller was cut in half by the MG-42 before he could pull his pin. Private Leo Rossi, 19, from Brooklyn, died trying to drag Miller back. He had a wooden rosary his mother had sewn into his jacket lining. He died with his hand clutching the beads. Captain Sterling, a West Point graduate with a crisp uniform and a rigid adherence to the field manual, watched the slaughter through his binoculars. When Thorn suggested that the standard rifle was the wrong tool for the plumbing of this trench, Sterling turned red. He called Thorn's ideas peasant nonsense and ordered another by-the-book charge for dawn. Thorn didn't join the charge. He stayed low, belly crawling through the death zone until he was close enough to smell the German tobacco. While the West Point strategist looked for a gap in the fire, Thorn looked for the geometry of the flaw. He found it, a 4-inch wide ventilation slot at the base of the bunker, intended to drain rainwater and spent shell casings. It was a straight, unobstructed line into the heart of von Richter's safe zone. Thorn went back to the camp and went rogue. He liberated a section of pipe from a destroyed field kitchen and another from a wrecked supply jeep. He scavenged 12-gauge buckshot shells from a discarded Winchester shotgun. When Captain Sterling saw Thorn filing down the pipe threads, he threatened him with an immediate court-martial for unauthorized field modifications. Thorn didn't argue. He didn't salute. He simply waited for the moon to vanish behind the clouds and slipped into the darkness with zero support. The sensory details of the Hürtgen were a sensory assault. The smell of fermented pine needles, the mud sucking at his boots like a hungry animal. Thorn reached the ventilation slot. He moved with mechanical precision. He didn't feel like a soldier. He felt like a pipe fitter closing a valve, 43 degrees downward, 14 inches off the ground, 8 yards of clearance. He slid the 12-gauge shell into the rear pipe. He gripped the outer sleeve. His sweat was cold, stinging his eyes. Inside, he heard the clink of von Richter's coffee cup against a porcelain saucer. He heard a German joke about the American cowards in the mud. Thorne aligned the iron. He exhaled halfway. He held his breath. He slammed the pipes together. Boom! The recoil was a physical blow to his shoulder, nearly cracking the bone. The .00 buckshot didn't just hit the targets, it hit the concrete floor at a shallow angle, creating a kill cone of lead and stone chips that ricocheted off every wall. Slam, boom, slam, boom. The sounds were short, staccato, violent. In 6 seconds, the iron gate went silent. No screams, just the sound of a porcelain saucer shattering on the floor. When the smoke cleared, 12 German officers and gunners were neutralized. The iron gate had been unlocked by $3 worth of scrap metal and one man's refusal to follow a suicidal doctrine. 40 American lives were saved that morning because Thorne understood pressure better than he understood rank. The Army eventually studied the incident. Years later, they would officially adopt specialized combat shotguns and breaching tools into their reconnaissance doctrine, but they never mentioned Elias Thorne. His kitchen pipe was confiscated as unauthorized equipment and likely melted down. After the war, Thorne didn't stay for the medals. He went back to Pittsburgh. He went back to the rail yards and the steel mills, carrying his lunchbox and his silence. He never told his wife or his children about the Iron Gate. He had pipes to fit and a life to rebuild. He was just a man who knew how to fix a problem when the experts couldn't. If you found this story compelling, please like this video. Subscribe to stay connected with these untold histories.